Well, good afternoon, councillors, and welcome to yourselves, the staff, the guests today, and all those at home who are viewing online. So, welcome to the council meeting of Wednesday the 2nd of February, and I'll call for apologies. All here, so there is none. Extraordinary business. I know of none. Declarations of interest. Just on one matter, we did have Bernie Mara from the Ashburton Hospital was going to come and present today on the COVID response, but she's now unavailable, so it's been rescheduled for the 16th of February for her to attend that meeting. Declarations of interest. Stuart?
Item number 6.
Are you the only one?
I presume so.
Okay, we'll take that noted. And councillors, if your phones are obviously turned off, and if you're going to be speaking, if you could leave your light on until you finish speaking, because if you do turn it off, you will go back to the back of the queue to come back in again. So just be mindful of that, thank you. With public forum, we're up to that now, and we have 2 people here today to talk to us from the Staveley Ice Rink Trust, and we have Richard, me, and Claire Harden. Claire, Richard, the floor is yours. Please turn your lights on.
So thank you for having us. We've come today to do a wee overview and to inform the councillors about what we're up to up at the Staveley Ice Rink. And yeah, just to give you a little bit of an overview. So the history of the ice skating rink up at Staveley is, so it was developed in 1949, and in 1974 the curling rink was added. So it's been up there for over 60 years. In 1981, the Hall Society took over the running of the rink due to it being more feasible for a community organisation to run the rink at the time. In 2021, the Hall Society purchased the land that the rink had been on. It had been on operating on locally owned land, and so now it owns the land. Due to warmer winters, our community feel the need to future-proof the ice rink by installing refrigeration, which is where we're at the moment. So we've researched other rinks throughout the country and have seen outdoor ice skating and curling rinks are having growth. So we see this rink bringing major social connections. So we were open for 3 days last year. In that 3 days, which was just after the flooding, we were able to bring the community together, which was pretty amazing to see. We also made over $10,000 in the 3 days we were open. So for the feasibility of the rink, and historically the rink has run at a profit, and the profit goes back into the community. The Staveley Hall Society that runs the rink is a charitable trust, and it's also an incorporated society. We've got over 20 families and volunteers plus members that help year in, year out, so we've got a very strong volunteer base in Staveley. The total of this project is just over 1.1 million, and that's including 10% contingency. We feel as the project team that we can bring this down, but we're putting that at the figure at the moment to make sure we cover all of our costs. At this point to date, we have over 753,000, and that is including the grants from Mid and South Canterbury Trust, the Lions Foundation, plus we've had over 50 big and small donations from the community and community businesses, which we've been pretty lucky to get, and that's been just under 6 months of fundraising. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but it's been really good. This also includes $210,000 of debentures from the Wind Whistle Curling Club. We've also had large donations from them too. And this is something that if we don't need to use, we don't want to use. If we can get funding locally, that will save us the repayments. We're hoping to get $250,000 to $300,000 from the Lotto Facilities Fund later this year. And we're also hoping to get funding from the Air Rescue Trust and New Zealand Community Trust. We're also hoping to apply for funding through the council, through the community grants. So we have a business case which we've sent through to you, plus a PAN. So we're we're hoping to ask the council for the infrastructure funding through the Staveley Hall Society, and we're also asking the council that if there is the possibility through that grant funding round to fund more through that funding, that we would be very keen to see that happen if possible. After all of our funding options are exhausted, should we have a shortfall, we'd like the ability to approach the council for loan funding if needed. We don't feel that we will get to that point, but we also want to put that on the table just in case. So that's, and you've got the our proposal and business plan there. So that's.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. We have got it's on our Stellar program. We got the business case and the overall of the outline of the project up there. So that's good. Richard, have you anything to add?
Sorry?
Have you anything to add?
No, I think just the project is going really well at the moment, and Claire's done very well obtaining what we already got. But yeah, the amount of how people feel about it, it's great. And the community are really wanting it to go ahead, and I'm sure it will.
Yeah, it seems a very worthy project, and it's a good example of the community working together for the benefit of the community, which is what we all like to see. It's good. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Flew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just something a little bit odd. Basically, on page 6, you're saying with any profits made each year will go back into other community projects in the Staveley area, which I don't have any problem with. Yeah, on your funding, you're saying that you want to retain the monies from the GST refunds for future capital works and also to cover working capital. I find a little bit, I mean, mostly when you're going to be GST registered, the money you'd be asking for would be the net GST. What you're asking for is the gross GST inclusive amount with the idea of retaining that $141,000. I find that slightly odd.
We're not going to get the full through the full GST back, but we will get some, and we do hope that we're pretty certain that we're going to cover all costs through the infrastructure upgrades. But there are a couple of things that are coming in that we hope that extra funding will cover. So yeah, that figure's not 100% accurate with the GST.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. A comment and then a question, but I think you've done a fantastic job in raising the fund so far. The Mayor and I were at the open day you had, or the launch for this project, and it was a really, really good turnout. Question from me is, were you always thinking that you would approach council for some funding, or I know you've tried to have fundraisers in the last 6 months, but obviously with COVID they've fallen over, so is council was sort of a backup plan, or was that always the aim?
It's always been in the back of our minds that there's the potential there due to the policy that the council has for community funding. So it's something that the group and the Windwhistle Curling Club have always stated that they would be keen to do this through them. But if that's not possible, I'm really keen to make sure, due to these old guys telling me that they need to get this done now because they might not be around next year, that we're really keen to make sure that we cover all of our bases just in case.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn.
Just looking at the days you're going to be open, is that limited by sunset, sunrise type of thing being the coldest part of the year to keep your electricity costs down? Or because, as I say, you're only open 3 months. I mean, most people would be opening on the maximum they can to get as much usage of the facility.
Historically, the rink has only ever opened for those months of the year, and the daylight hours at that rink suit those times, the sun lower and cooling the ice. So ideally, best case scenario is we wouldn't need to turn the power on due to us having the concrete base and less ice needed for ice on the rink. There's the potential there that we could go for a winter without needing to turn refrigeration on. We have only done the 3 months, and one of the other key points is we've only done it for 3 months at this point in time because we're completely community run. So carving starts at the end of that time. So it does kind of shorten the volunteer base that we've got in the community. And yeah, there's the potential, and we are very keen to see that expanding in the future if it's possible. And also skating on the rink over the summer. But extending that would change our existing user rights, which would mean a resource consent. So that would be something we'd look at further down the line.
Yeah, that is the big reason. The reason that we only go 3 months is because of the volunteer base we have. We'll just have to see how it goes. I think our biggest problem when we are open, we'll probably have too many people. So it'd be good to keep it open even longer than 3 months. But at the moment, we're tied under volunteers. Yeah, that is a bit difficult. But yeah, it can be looked at later on.
Sure.
So the $45,000 you've got in there for electricity, there may be some cold seasons where you may not even require that.
That is the absolute maximum cost it would cost us to have the power running. Yep.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you, and I appreciated all your presentation documents. I think it's a great example of a community pulling together. But my questions were around the community funding for installation. I might have missed what it was for, but I'm looking on the document where there's 3 lots of installation. There's the electrical systems, the piping for the concrete, or the refrigeration. So just to try and get a grip on how much money you'd be looking at applying for through the community grants.
Through the community grants, hang on, I'll just bring up my, at the moment we have our earth moving covered, and we have the refrigeration covered as well for the rink, and our concrete is we've got quite a way down the track with that. So we do have a few things, and we're just looking at the budget in the next week to see when we put that application through the council exactly where the shortfall is and where we'd need that funding.
Thank you. So the one that you didn't mention, looking on the budget here at 84 inclusive, so just to get a ballpark figure of what you might be requiring.
As much as we can get.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lovett.
I'm just wondering, how's your Give a Little page going? Are you going to ramp up your promotion to try and gather in a lot more money, or is that kind of fallen, come to the end of that, or
we have that ticking away purely because it's a very easy way of people to instantly give cash, but it's not a way that we try and promote because there is costs to that type of donation. Okay. So we have a lot of donations coming in through the bank account. Probably 90% of the donations that we're receiving come direct, and it's a very small percentage that's coming through Give a Little. So it's there, and we do use it in all our promotion, but we don't promote it majorly.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're going to push the promotion and put get people to give you donations again, just to do another big push to get, because we're coming to the next stage of summer and people will be thinking about this and put it on the front, go out in the front foot, this could happen, and do another big surge for funds.
Well, just even now, you get locals that just come up to you, like I've had 3 the last couple of days, giving a truckload of concrete. $1,300 each. I mean, yeah, we've got a lot of donations like that. People say, "Oh, sorry, I haven't approached you before, but here's some money."
Yeah.
Good. Councillor Burrow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't wait till I can see the eyes there and get back on again. My question is, the project committee will operate with fixed price contract. Where do you find fixed price contracts this time with COVID?
So Carl Shannon and Rob Withers have been working with the contractors, and they've the quotes that we've had have been given as fixed price quotes. So
and it will be standard for the coming year.
It's still standing, yes, yep. So we're in constant communication with all of them, and we've fixed the refrigeration units being fixed. Yeah, there's quite a lot of it is still
okay. Same price. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. There's no further questions. Thank you, Richard and Claire, for coming in. We are going to be doing the grants in the next wee while for after during the budget process. We'll get the correct people to get in touch with you and let you know how to put an application up. Thank you.
Thank you much for your time.
Confirmation of the minutes, councillors, on page 3, item number 4. Any alterations or additions to be made on page 3? Page 4. Page 5. 6. 7. Page 8. If there's no alterations or additions, someone like to move? Councillor Lovett, Councillor McMillan. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Thank you. Next item, number 5, reports. And we have the report here to amend the Transportation Bylaw Schedule D. Tony, thank you for presenting this. Is there anything further you wish to add to your report?
Thank you. Yes, there is. In the second bullet point under the summary, I have managed to get an inconsistency there with what I was meaning. So the recommendation is to make East Street prohibited to heavy traffic from the Moore Street to Havelock Street intersections. My second point in the summary doesn't reflect that. There was an earlier iteration, so my apologies.
Okay. Everyone got that? Got the meaning of it? Any questions for Tony, councillors? Councillor Lovett.
When buildings, if they can't be earthquake proof, come down, they will still be able to get special permits to get trucks in there, or they'll have to be smaller trucks because of the damage they'll do? Or where do you sit with that?
Mr. McKen.
Through the chair, that's something we would manage as part of their requests for using the road and the road closure. So we would manage that, and if possible, we would try and reduce the load. But we're happy to work with them in doing so.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Tony, through the chair, for your report. I'm looking at the prohibition shall not apply to, that paragraph. If you have delivery vehicles that are big, I don't know if they do, like furniture shops might have massive delivery vehicles, are they excluded from this requirement? Or how will they deliver?
Thank you, through the chair. So no, they're not excluded from that. They'll be needing to use smaller delivery vehicles if possible. In most instances, we actually don't see that this is a problem, and most businesses are doing that from a pure access perspective. A large vehicle is quite difficult.
Have you ascertained whether there are big delivery vehicles that go down East Street still? Are there big, like most of them are little vans, aren't there, that I've seen? But if you're a big furniture shop.
Yes, anecdotally, no, we haven't seen big delivery vehicles down East Street, but we have seen several stock trucks.
Stock, well, because they're trying to avoid the roadworks, I suppose. Yeah.
We think that might be what's happening, but it's not a good look.
Because that would be a shame, just as an aside, if the unintended consequence of this bylaw was that delivery vehicles were prohibited from dropping off stock for stores in town, and then the stores had to pay additional to get their stock repacked onto smaller vehicles, if possible. If that's a little thing, that would be, yeah.
Through the chair, absolutely, and that's why the team was very mindful of this when we first started discussing what an amendment would look like, to make sure we weren't going to make it more difficult or onerous for our local businesses.
Clause 1017 states that they accept for the purpose of picking up or delivering goods.
That's right.
To an address in the urban area. So that means that heavy vehicles can go for that purpose.
Yes, yes, but Tony said that that's not an exclusion from the.
You wouldn't have a stock truck going down.
No, but you're not just excluding stock trucks, are you, Tony?
Yes, you are.
Yes. This is only for stock trucks.
Sorry, I'm not clear on the question.
When I look at clause 1,
no, Councillor Cameron, you've gone off. We have to wait to get in the queue now. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just some clarification, but I don't think that might be for Neil. Our previous roading manager told us time and time again that Bridge Street is not a heavy traffic part of the road, of the heavy roading system. Or do we have different heavy vehicles criteria?
Yeah, that's correct. We have streets that can have heavy loads, but you actually have an HPMV, which is the exceptionally heavy vehicles. That's what he was referring to.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
I've got about 3 questions, Mr Mayor, if I may. The first question is, do I need to congratulate staff on the quick putting in of the parking sensors that last week were still in Auckland?
Are they in, are they?
I see here that installation of parking sensors throughout this part of the CBD has been completed. So, did you get them out of the warehouse and get them done pretty quick? If so, congratulations.
No, that's not correct, unfortunately. They have been held up and they haven't arrived yet.
So this part of the report's not correct?
That's not correct. I think there was an assumption that it would have been done by now, but they've been held up again.
Okay, can I try another one?
Yes.
This one stems from a lecture which I rightly got and received from Councillor Brahm on the strength of pavers. So I see in number 3, background number 3, reduce the damage to paving and surrounds. Can I please be absolutely assured that a heavy truck will not damage the pavers?
That's correct. The structure, the road structure can take that loading. It's just that we don't want lots of trucks. We want to extend the life of that road. It can certainly take the loads occasionally, but we want to try and avoid the regular trucks travelling down there regularly. But it can withstand the loads on the odd occasion.
And the last question, Mr Mayor, I'm wondering if I can have support from the manager in charge of services, that he will help support me on page 13 of the agenda in item 1017.3 to add a new clause F, that events approved by council can partake, because I ask this question because I do not want to be the councillor that stops the Christmas parade or other community events that use big trucks that are well over the 3.5 tonne. Can I have that assurance and that you'll help me, please?
Yeah, we can certainly do that, yep.
Okay, we'll add clause F in, which states that exactly what you were saying. If council is happy to have that, if council is happy to have that added. Yes, Councillor Alderson.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. So it's the big containerised trucks, stock trucks, etc., that you're trying to prevent, which I totally support the move, what we're discussing. And do you put something out in the media of the transport industry, if we approve this, that tries to raise that awareness to them?
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, certainly. So we have to publicly notify the bylaw amendment and have that available, and we do plan to get in touch directly with the heavy vehicles operators, so they're really clear on this going forward.
Thank you. No, I certainly approve it, because right near where I live, we had a big heavy containerised truck screw its wheels round on Grove Street on the hot Saturday afternoon, and you should see what it's done to the bitumen. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony, item number 2 in the recommendation is we bring forward the review of the transportation bylaw to next financial year. Why are we needing to do that?
Thank you. Through the chair, on review of this, and certainly with some fresh eyes in the teams over in the office, it became quite apparent to us that their bylaw is relatively clunky. We could make it more streamlined, and in some areas where there's the possibility that council needs to have another discussion if what's in the bylaw is actually what they want to see going forward. So we think it's really prudent to bring it forward. Timeline wise, with the team's workload, it would be either next year or after the next LTP. So I think if we can fit it in next year would be prudent.
I did read have a look at the bylaw, and there's some outdated things in there. Councillor Brown?
If there's no more questions, I'm quite happy to move the recommendation as it stands on page 9.
Second that. Councillor Rawlinson. speak to the motion? Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I like it. It's good. You want to protect what you've got, and you don't need those heavy trucks through there. And I can understand the second point as well. If you can get it all put together and it looks like new, it will be great.
Further speakers for or against the motion? Oh, yeah. I'll take some advice on that, Philippa, for adding F. Just push it.
Just wondered if you're so happy that minutes just record that you've agreed to clause F, if it can be done, or whether you need it in a resolution.
Yeah, we'll just agree that we add F, which was Mr. McCann.
Events approved by council.
I'll just put your light on, do it again.
Oh, sorry. Events approved by council
Is F. Yep.
is the addition.
Thank you. Including F. Councillor Mackay?
So, Mr Mayor, would you wish an amendment for that?
No, we don't need to. We've agreed to it.
You've agreed to it, okay. Yeah, I can now agree with the recommendation. But with number 2, I'm having some problems. Number 2 is a transport bylaw that prohibits a lot of stuff. I'm wondering if we can give some thought to having a bylaw that actually permits a lot of stuff without actually changing what the bylaw prohibits. Prohibit is a word that I struggle with. Permitted is a word that I thrive on. I'll just leave that for the writers to see what they come up with.
We'll take that on board. That's just the wording changes, a bit more user friendly. Yep. Okay, any further speakers for or against the motion? Right of reply needed? No. I'll put the motion on in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Item number 6, over 80s parking policy. Councillor Wilson, you going to contribute or not? You did declare an interest. Councillor Wilson is moving away from the table for the debate and discussion on this and the voting. As he's declared an interest. Mel, anything further to add?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I would like to bring to your attention that the proposed policy would become effective in April to allow officers time to set up the operational side of the over 80s parking permits. Other than that, there's nothing further to add, and we're happy to take any questions.
Councillors, any questions? Councillor Mackay?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Wilson, really why has he pulled out of discussion on this? Because we all represent the community in different ways, and just because we have an age that we may have reached, why should we be discriminated against? Because I do not see a financial gain for Mr Wilson out of this that will surpass anyone else over 80 that may have the same financial gain in being able to park closer to a shop. Yep. So I actually think it's unfair to exclude him, but he does have the right to decide, but I just think it's unfair that he has.
Yeah. I'm not excluding him from the debate or the discussion or the vote. Councillor Wilson declared that. If he wants to undeclare that and join the discussion, he's more than welcome, but it is Councillor Wilson's decision. Any further questions? And we have Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to ask, have we any idea how many over 80s that own a car and driving in Ashburton or in the county? Have we any idea how many there is?
Thank you, through the chair. It's a really difficult question. We can certainly understand the numbers of over 80s, but those who still have a valid driver's licence and will be driving in town, we don't know the numbers to that.
Okay, yeah, I'd hate them to come to town on masses on a day. Yeah.
Councillor Cameron?
We had that workshop this morning, and I think the over 80s at the moment is about 2,200 people, and I think a lot of them do have their licence. But it's not really, I understood this policy was not really a matter, as what Councillor Mackay said, it's a matter of making it easier for the older drivers in Ashburton to be able to park nearer the shops. So I don't know how this is helping that. This is giving them to park longer at the shops, but how is it helping them park nearer to the shops? Just, it's the length thing, they're just doubling the length. The problem in Ashburton is location and parking locations. Do we make some parks over 80 special parks on each block? I mean, that would seem prohibitive, but how are we getting these people nearer the shops?
Thank you, through the chair. So we did contemplate whether we had an equivalent over 80s park that would be like the mobility parking. However, we started to run into difficulties then of what that might mean for the loss of parking for everybody else by the time we put the two together. We also considered whether we should look at combining the mobility parking with the over 80s, and so that both users groups could access those parks, but then that was actually quite disadvantageous to those who are mobility card holders, given they have quite specific needs. So in answer to your question, this was about the best that we could come up with in terms of being able to give our older residents longer time to spend in the central part of town, because that is where mainly our parks are located.
So may I make a comment?
Yep. Comment, question time.
So I'll make a comment later.
When we debate it. Yeah.
It's sort of okay, I'll make a comment later.
Yeah, question times at the moment. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a couple of questions. Were age concern or the senior citizens talked to about this policy prior to drafting it, and how are you going to promote it down the track? Because a lot of our promotion happens on social media or online, whereas I think possibly over 80s may not see that.
Thank you. So we had much discussion about the user groups and whether we should consult with age concern or not. We opted instead to bring the policy to council as a draft, because we felt that it was reflecting the conversation, the direction that council had given us through the parking strategy. In terms of implementation and rolling out the policy and making sure people are aware that it exists, we will do certainly a full engagement approach to that when the permits are available from hopefully the 1st of April is what we're thinking. Potentially we could add a flyer into people's rates bills, given that that's quite a physical piece that most people would be looking at from a material from council, rather than just an online focus, which is what we would do for other user groups in the community.
The recommendation doesn't have the word draft in it.
Draft of over 80 parking policy.
The recommendation does not have the word draft in it. The recommendation is we adopt this.
Sorry, just for clarity.
I'm confused now with draft and then we're adopting.
So we're asking you to adopt the draft policy that you've got in front of you, and that would become the effect of a policy from April.
Right. There's no timeline in the recommendation. Do we need one?
We could add a timeline that council adopts the over 80s parking policy as attached in Appendix 1 to take effect from April 2022, if you'd like. Sorry, and the specific date is the 4th of April 2022.
4th? Yeah, 4th. Add that in for yeah. Thanks. I just have one question, and it's on background point number 3. No concessions for under 30 minutes parking. Why would you not have for under 30 minutes?
This is in line with our mobility parking policy, so we thought that they should be aligned with the other policy.
Thank you. Councillor Falloon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, how many oldies will use the mobility parking zones, and what are the to stop them using them, the same as what's to stop us using the mobility parking zones?
So with the mobility parking, you need a permit displayed in your car, The plan is with this policy to implement it, there'll be a permit that you'll have to display in your vehicle, and it will be up to our parking wardens to police that. If we see vehicles in these spaces staying for a longer period of time than what we've allowed for, that they would be ticketed accordingly.
Councillor Cameron.
I'm just reading about what other councils do, and you've done a desktop research as to what other happens in other things at other councils, and they do the same as what you're proposing. Did anybody have any alternative offering in order to facilitate proximity to the CBD of their towns?
Through the chair, from memory, I don't think any other councils had anything like that.
So the over 80s parking policy is in the other councils. Can I ask another question? That have been put forward and adopt one is increase the length of, yeah.
Through the chair, it was either to increase the length or to offer free parking. But in the CBD, as far as I'm aware, other than the pay and display, I think we're not charging for parking now.
That's correct. Yeah.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. And I support this recommendation, not that I've hit 80 and nowhere near it, but I just have a question, and it's around, would we perhaps review this if we don't get high uptake? And a review could be done through all the occupiers of the senior centre, and it would be a good way of promoting it too, to go to the senior centre and look at all the different occupiers there who sit in that, most of them sit in this category, so just to see whether it's working for them. Would that be a possibility?
Thank you, through the chair. So we've got a review, whether we've got this policy to be reviewed every 5 years or as required. So we could pull it forward if we were starting to think, actually, we're only getting 10 people a year who have a permit for this. So we could pull that forward in the schedule, subject to council approval.
Thanks.
Ms Donaldson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A more accurate way to review it is probably through the parking wardens themselves, because they will see how many are displayed on the dashboards when they walk around and will be able to report back on the uptake.
So just to clarify, what happens in a pay and display areas for over 80s if they use those parks, if we adopt this policy? Is there any change?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we've only got the one pay and display, and it wouldn't apply there because that's on Eastfield's land, and the arrangement we have with them is that we go halves. So that would be problematic, I think, to introduce it for that. If you were to reintroduce pay and displays elsewhere in the district, then I think we would want to revisit this and see how that would fit in.
Councillor McMillan.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Looking for a second.
No
Councillor Graham. You want to speak to the motion?
I think the draft policy is as good as it stands. It's got a number of issues in there, and that I think will help with parking for over 80s, and it just really shows, you know, we heard about this in our long-term plan process, and we're actioning on it, so I think it's good.
I'll just mention also we've added the words effective from the 4th of April to 2022. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I won't vote on it, but I will say I don't think the majority will proudly put in their windscreen they're over 80. So, I mean, it'll be limited, hopefully, for those with, have got limited mobility, but they're not, they don't qualify for a mobility sticker. So hopefully it'll be just be a certain proportion of those over 80 that find it difficult to make use of.
Thank you, Councillor Letham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I understand that parking for our senior citizens has worked quite well in the past, and I really can't see what advantages there are for them just to increase the amount of time that they can park. We're not providing any more parking areas for senior citizens in more desirable locations or in the centre of the town. We're just allowing them to stay longer. Don't begrudge them that, but I fail to see the reason for the plan.
Councillor Cameron.
And I sort of support Roger, but when we discussed this last year, the idea was that we'd lost 40 plus car parks in the centre of town, and that those with restricted mobility or discomfort or walkers or whatever that did not have a disability pass had to park at the West Street car park and go across the railway line and get to town. And so we thought, when we brought it up, or when I mentioned it, that we should make available local car parks so people can access the shops more easily, not stay longer in the town, but have access to the shops. Even now we have driving round to get parks on busy times in Ashburton because we've lost the car parks, which is great. The town is beautiful, but that's harder and harder because the older people, 80 plus with a walker, have to drive round. Also, we don't have that many disability parks. I know we have more than we had. They're not in the ideal locations and they're not central. So we don't really want to give the over 80s access, unless they qualify for it, to the disability parks. So I don't know. I mean, I support this movement because anything that supports our older citizens, you know, makes it easier for them to access the town is great. But it's not really addressing the question of how are we getting over 80s with mobility concerns or disabilities or a sore leg or whatever into the town centre more readily. I don't know the answer to that, but that's my opinion.
Councillor Brown?
I might have an answer to that point. If you can't find a car park at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, try 10 o'clock in the morning. Just with all, like other things, you have to pick your day and you pick your time.
Right, a reply, Councillor McMillan?
Thank you, and I take...
Sorry, Jane, did you...
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was just going to add, I know it was a while ago that you had this discussion, but this policy is actually exactly what you asked for, and there was discussion at the time on the issue Councillor Cameron's raised, but because of the shortfall of car parking, it was felt that if you designated specific spaces and then they weren't used, you were just exacerbating the overall problem. It's a bit like requests for car parks for bigger vehicles. You can't stop small vehicles parking in spaces, and meanwhile you've got even less car parks because you've tried to make some that are bigger. So the overall thing was to try not to reduce the number of car parks, but to make it less of a rush for older people. That was what you were commenting on at the time, so that they could shop in a bit more of a leisurely fashion.
Right, a reply, Councillor Will.
Thank you. It's a start. I think we need to start somewhere, and we can review this in a year or two if necessary, if it's not fitting the bill, but I think we have to start somewhere.
I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Passed. Thank you, Mel. Tony. Item number 7, Hakateri Hut Holders Association Water Reservoir Project. Clear. Anything further to add to your report? Councillors, any questions? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just number 2, that ADC staff oversees the project. Is there a cost for that, or is that all involved in that $9,547?
No, there's no cost from the council end.
No.
No cost from who, sorry?
From the council.
Right. Councillor Falloon.
Yeah, I don't know if someone can answer this or not, but when I looked at the their accounts to the 30th September 2020, their rates were only $33,610, or rates and water charges. I see in the budget they've presented as part of these papers that the budgeted amount for rates and water charges has gone to just under $58,000. Is that because the water charges have gone up because of the water improvements that have been done down there, or what's the reason for such a 72% increase?
From my understanding, it's solely because of the water infrastructure upgrade.
the lower Hakaturi huts used to have their own water schemes and they joined the council scheme, was it last year? Or
Yes.
the year before? So they went on, the council's charging higher level of service during the Hakaturi scheme. Has Fens, I think there's somewhere in the report, have Fens been asked about their feedback on the...
Fens have been asked, but they have not given support for this project.
They're not supporting?
Monetary support.
Oh, no monetary support?
No.
Councillor Flynn?
If there are no other questions, then
there's more questions.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Lovett?
I'm agreeant with it, but I was just wondering, like, council's overseeing all this, and not, you'll be joining the upper and lower huts together in this scheme. And there's fire alarms there which aren't connected to Fens. Is there a plan of attack there to connect everybody together and connect it to the Fens? So if there is a fire, it just automatically goes straight through to the...
From my understanding, there isn't a plan at the moment to connect straight through to Fens. It may be something they'll look at down the line, but at the moment, from what I can understand, they're just very keen to get the water to begin with.
Just wondering if council's involved with all this, can they kind of put in the motion and get it all tidied up down there?
Yes, I can talk to William McCormick, who's managing this project, about that.
Because we might as well get it all sorted in one, my thoughts are getting it all sorted out in one go.
I'm just wondering what schemes, Councillor Lovett, are connected to the Fens systems?
It just said they're not connected to it. I'm just wondering, can they be or whatever, because they've got a bit of forest and dry land and stuff down there, and we know there's lots of fires happening around the country, and if there was a system there, it would be quite good, just kind of having that done, and for emergencies down there and everything else with civil defence, just looking towards the future. That's where I was heading to.
I think might be opening a can of worms. Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Through the chair, I see ACL have provided a quote which is $10,997.90, but they're not asking for that full amount. Is that because is there any reason for that? Will they have $1,000 left to fund it?
It's the GST.
GST. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Latham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saw it in the report, but I can't just lay my finger on it. How many hut holders are there down there? There's 300, a figure that I...
100 lower and 100 up.
100 and so.
200.
50 odd up and down, plus them together about 100.
Not as many as I thought. I had a funny feeling I saw it in the report.
Yeah, that's number 4.
Sorry?
Number 4.
Number 4.
100 dwellings.
100 dwellings. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
The upper Makaturi has firefighting capabilities. Where do they get their water from?
I'm not sure.
Because they're 200 metres away. Another question, the tanks that are there, why don't you put the fitting onto the tank where they're sitting now?
They need to be, from my understanding, they need to be moved closer to the water connection. So they've worked out that this will be the cheapest way to upgrade the system is to move the tanks next to the system.
Right. Further questions, councillors? Councillor Falloon?
I'll move. Normally, I would be against it because these guys are quite wealthy in the bank, but in actual fact, this is actually not for the use of the hut holders personally. It's for fire protection, and therefore it should be funded by the council.
It moved, Councillor Falloon.
And I'll second that. Thank you.
Councillor Lovett. Just make a comment, fire is not council's responsibility anymore. It was removed from us about 3-4 years ago. It's not council's responsibility. Councillor Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just take the view that if every hut holder down there put $100 in the pot, they've got enough money.
Councillor Cameron.
If fire isn't council's responsibility, and if we don't fund the $9,000, so they don't have adequate water to fight a fire and protect their life, who steps in there? Does Fenn step in, or do they just carry on without adequate water?
Well, we're past question time and debate mode, but I'd say the fire engines actually bring water with them. I'm going to put the motion. If it asks, right a reply, Councillor Flynn? No. I'm going to put the motion. I'm not in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Want it recorded, Councillor? Recorded, Councillor Lethan, both against and the Mayor. Thank you. Passed. Thanks, Claire. Next item is the RDR management, item number 8 on page something. 37. Neil? RDR management, I'm aware of this too, and this item was brought by the Chief Executive at the last council meeting before Christmas. We had two RDR, the CEO of RDR and the director come along, presented this, and looking at the varying the water supply agreement for the purpose of using constrained water, and if any was not wanting to do this, it would be Trustpower. Trustpower are in agreement to do it for a 3-year trial period. So me as council and being a director of RDR also agree with it. I'm just thinking, do I have a conflict of interest as a director of RDR, but there's no pecuniary interest here for me at all, so I'm declaring that I don't. Questions? Councillor Mackay? Or moving?
I'll move when you're ready.
No questions, take mover. Councillor Mackay?
I'll move.
Councillor Falloon, second?
I actually had a question.
Oh, okay. Hang on, we'll get a second in now. Councillor Cameron? Question, Councillor Falloon?
I just note one of the disadvantages that Aoreki Environmental do not agree with this. Does that give us issues or problems moving forward if we approve this?
I'm not sure if is it stated in the report they don't agree with it, or is it stated in the report? What number was that?
It's under disadvantages. May not be supported.
The word may.
May, yeah.
Yeah, they haven't just. Yeah, this process has to go through a consenting process with Environment Canterbury, and Aoreki Environmental will be involved in that stage. And they may support it or they may not. We don't know. Councillor Mackay?
Mr Mayor, I encourage councillors to support this move, quite simply because there has finally been, in my opinion, a realisation by Trustpower that they can't actually use the water anyway, because they haven't got a power station big enough, and they haven't got a culvert at an underpass at the Hines River to get it to High Bank. So this water is consented water. It's sitting there, it's unused, and I think if it can be of benefit to the Ashburton District, and the people who I think will benefit more from this will actually be those residents who have shallow wells downstream from this area. So I actually see a benefit to the people south of Hines that have a shallow well for their drinking water, and I think we should take this opportunity to enhance that well. I think you should all be in favour, councillors. I can see no downside.
Thank you. Councillor Ethan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to endorse what Councillor Mackay has said. He's summed it up very well, and I would be supporting this direction for the very reasons he's mentioned.
Any further speakers for or against the motion? If not, do you need a right to reply, Councillor Mackay? I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 9, elected members' remuneration. On page 45. Philippa, it's your report.
Well, I don't have anything to add, but I
Nothing
can
to
ask
add.
lots of questions.
Take questions. Any questions, councillors? Seek a mover. Councillor McMillan, question?
Just a question. So this is obviously set by the Remuneration Authority. So if this wasn't passed, would that make any difference? I mean, they're still going to set the remuneration, aren't they?
Yes, they are. What they're looking for at the moment is an indication from councils that they are in agreement with the size indices and weightings that they've been applying for the next triennium. And they're looking for also just some information to help them create the next determination. So council's being asked to say whether it's changing its structure and the way it currently allocates its pool. So the final amount isn't known, but they've given an approximate pool, which will probably be very close to the final one. And yes, there is no discretion for council to refuse it or take a lower amount.
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, I was going to move the motion, but I'm not sure there's more questions. But if not,
we've got a question from Councillor Falloon.
Yeah, I just find a 15.76% increase a little bit unjustifiable in my own mind. I mean, basically, we've only got inflation up to September of, or up to the end of December of 5.19. Admittedly, this does go back for 3 years, so there may be some justification there, but to me, I feel a little bit uneasy about a 15.76% increase myself.
Look, if Councillor Falloon feels uneasy about the increase, what can he do about that?
What he does with it when he's paid it is entirely his personal choice, but there is no ability for council to change the Remuneration Authority's determination. And you also need to factor that not all people currently elected members or potentially elected members are in similar financial positions, and the amount also has to be attractive and fair and reasonable, not only to the ratepayer but to the person in the role.
That's correct, and there's been talk over the years that if the role paid more, then more younger people who have full-time jobs could go to a part-time job and spend a lot more time doing council and not miss out on any salary that they would miss out on. This goes that distance, I believe. It helps. So we may get younger people around the table. We may not, but time will tell. This helps. Councillor Cameron.
I read today on the news, on the net, that wages are not keeping abreast with inflation. Inflation's at about 5-point-something%, and the average wage growth over the last year is 3.7%. It seems that there's a disconnect to me that elected members such as ourselves can benefit to a greater extent than the people that voted for us or are out there earning wages. And for me, a little bit like John, I feel very uncomfortable with that level of increase. And if we have to have an increase, and given the straitened times with COVID and the situation of many businesses, I don't agree we have to have an increase, but if we have to, I think it should be more modest and in line with what the rest of New Zealand is receiving.
As Ms Clark said, you can't determine what you get and what you don't get. Once it's delivered to you, you can decide what you do with it. And I have heard from a councillor before who works and is around this table that when they get someone in to fulfil their job when they're in this table, it actually costs them money to do it. So here's some way of going towards that. But if you don't want it, you can give it away.
Yes,
Councillor Cameron.
But thank you. Can I ask you an additional question? Philippa, I thought I understood that if we do not agree with this policy, we can decline it, and that would give feedback back to the Remuneration Authority, and they may moderate the increase. Is that correct or incorrect?
That's not entirely correct.
Okay.
The this is quite a major review that they've undertaken.
Okay.
And any feedback would have been needed some time ago. So they are really just looking to see whether councils are endorsing where they've got to with their final conclusion on the weightings and the size indices which they've set out, and it's shown in this report.
Thank you, thank you.
Steve?
Thank you. Just through the chair, just to remind councillors that were around for the last few years and for the ones that weren't, the Remuneration Authority have gone through a process over the last 3 to 5 years where they recognise that a lot of district councillors' remuneration was well below what it should be. They did quite a major study about 4 years ago, and they said they needed to lift it for the reasons that the Mayor mentioned, but also that there was a lot of duties that the bigger councillors did in city councils, etc., which were identical to the smaller district councils, but they weren't remunerated similar. But they did identify that they couldn't just bump salaries up in one big hit, and they said it was probably more affordable for communities to do it over a series of years. And Philippa might be able to clarify, but I think this was about the final year where there was going to be the significant increases to get it up to where they thought it should be.
Yeah, just to add to that, if this is, well, if it's passed, well, we get no choice on the amount of the dollars that go in. A councillor sitting around the table next term as a councillor would be approximately paid $47,000. So there's an incentive for someone who needs to work. They could go part-time and make this their job. So as Steve says, this is a good move to making this job more paid well for people who need to rely on it for their income, or do need to rely on it for their income. Councillor Brown.
If there's no more questions, I'm quite happy to move the recommendations.
Councillor Brown, seconded. Councillor Millen. Open debate. Being no debate, we'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Moving over, we're about half an hour ahead of where we need to be, so we'll go on to item number 10, which is the financial variance report. Welcome, Erin. And Paul's online as well. You there, Paul?
Yes, I am.
Great. Just before we start, Paul, this is the October to the end of October period. We're now February. Are we behind in these? We're supposed to be getting them a lot more regularly than what we are. Is there a reason for that?
Erin can probably answer that one.
Okay, Erin.
Yes, the November one's not far away, and as you'll probably know, we're understaffed at this moment. We're doing budgets as well as trying to run parallel activities. And with the audit running so late, that took up a lot of time we didn't really have.
Just a question on that, your GST returns you do monthly, are they all up to date?
Yes, they are.
And in my business, if I do a GST return, then that's the bones for everything else to drop out of. Is it the same in your business?
No, it's not. It's quite different. There's a whole cycle that has to be done with billing of jobs and the likes of that to get those out.
So we can't compare, that's fine. Councillor Flo?
Yeah, looking at the balance sheet and that sort of thing, has the balance sheet been updated to the starting figure as per the audited accounts as at 30th of June 2021?
As far as I'm aware, it has been, but I will check that against the audited accounts because you'll remember they weren't signed off until December.
Correct.
So there may be some movement there.
So I understand that you're resource lean at the moment, but is there any possibility that you will be able to start to catch up at some stage, and possibly when?
We have a new staff member starting at the end of the month, so we're anticipating that we'll be able to catch up with quite a bit of work with having another set of hands.
So we'll go through them page by page, and I'll do it in pages of 2. So the first page is 55. Stop me if you have any questions or queries. Next one is 57. It's in between. 59. 61. If I go past it, you can always go back. 63. 65. 67. 69. 71. 73. I just do have a question on 73, and it's around information systems, capital expenditure. And it's likely that the $1 million will not be spent. The question I have, is that loan funded or is that funded by depreciation?
I would have to return to you with an answer to that.
Okay, because if it's funded by depreciation, we could move that forward into our budget.
Mr Mayor, any surplus for capital expenditure not funded by IS is going into a reserve because we're sweating some of those assets and can be used when we shift to the new library and civic centre. It'll be used for some of, if there's any overruns there in IT equipment or AV equipment.
Yeah. Do you know if it's funded depreciation or capital? Loan funded,
that capital, it'll be mostly depreciation, but any shortfall is funded from loans, but it mostly depreciation.
Well, there's obviously no shortfall because it's you're not gonna, it's trailing. Yeah. Parked there at the back of your minds, councillors. 75. 77. 79. Do we need to receive that report, Philip? We do. Move that we receive the financial report. Councillor Rawlinson, Councillor Cameron. All in favour, please say aye. Carried.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
please?
you can. Yeah.
When you're saying the next month is nearly ready to come out, do we have to wait another couple of months to see that report, or will you email that out quite quickly?
Through the chair, I would expect that that would be emailed out in the same way that this one was.
For the I just update, it'll be the 16th of February council meeting, as Councillor Flynn says. Did I put that motion, didn't I? Yes. Yep, I did. Okay, the next item, number 11, the Ben Corp Treasury report. And we'll go through that one page by page. 82. Or instead of page by page, just pick something out of there, highlight if you want to question anything. Just looking at rates moving forward, and I'm looking at past 2028, fixing some of our loans further afield out. Has any thought been put into that as rates are rising?
Through the chair.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we have been extending the loan terms. So the last loan that was taken out was longer, and the future loans that are going out are probably going to be longer term as well. So we are looking at trying to lock in rates now before they start moving.
Up to 15 years out?
I think the LGFA does allow that, so we can look further out.
Great. They're only going one way. Any further questions on the Bancorp report? No. I move that we receive the Bancorp report. Councillor Cameron, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried, thank you. Item number 12, the Mayor's report. And Communities for Local Democracy, I sent a, thanks Sarah, sent you an email out with an update there. Councillor Mackay.
Mr Mayor, in the December one, on the 22nd of December, you and the Chief Executive met with Richard Bowman from BCI. There's been a matter sitting on this table for nearly 18 months. When will we be getting advice on that matter?
As soon as possible. Yeah. And I know what you're saying, it needs to be addressed, and it is being addressed. There's just a toing and the froing, but it is getting closer.
Is the toing and froing between BCI and ADC, or ADC and other parties?
Other parties, and BCI, and the Water Trust.
Oh my God. Okay, thank you.
It is seeking fair value. The council's looking at seeking fair value for the consent. It's not as simple as you would think. I'll move that we receive the Mayor's report.
I'll second.
That's what we're on. All in favour, please say aye.
Right.
Carried. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? So you said you'd do a verbal update on the Communities for Local Democracy.
Yeah, I did, and I did send out an email yesterday with the update from the Communities for Local Democracy.
So part of that said that elected members will be asked to sign their commitment, or?
Are you talking about the No Tahu bill?
No, I'm talking about the Communities for Local Democracy.
I know.
So,
yeah, there's some councils haven't joined there's 24 councils have joined the group of Communities for Local Democracy. The other, whatever that is, 43, have not joined. But there are councillors on those councils who have not been asked if they would like to join. So hence, that's the reason for asking all councillors individually if they want to join or not.
So does that mean that we will be asked, or because we signed the MOU that covers Ashburton District Council and the community board members?
I don't think the community board members will be asked unless it was in there.
That said that in the
well, they will be asked.
Yesterday.
Yeah, I assume that you will be asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That we're now waiting for 2:30 until Environment Canterbury are going to zoom in, and Jenny Huey, the chair, and Peter Scott, the deputy chair, and our local councillor Ian Mackenzie, who will join us in person. So that's 2:30 they're due in. So we could, Ozzy? We can't do it without the other two. So 2:30 is their scheduled time to come in. We could do the in-committee part of council now and open it up again at 2:30 when they join in. Jonathan, if you wanted to wait, you're more than welcome, but we'll be at 2:30, we'll be back in open meeting. we asked some time ago, we had a couple of questions from councillors of Ecan, so we thought we'd get you down, but COVID's not allowing that. So this is the next best option. So welcome, and I might just go to councillors and ask if they've got any questions of Chair Jenny. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask a question about the future of septic tanks, especially out in the east of Ashburton, Glassworks Road, Tates Road area. They've been working with a septic tank company trying to come up with some results. And Ecan, from what I can gather, we're told by some residents out there that you guys have pulled the pin. And we've got one house built which they can't live in, and there's 8 other titles, properties that have got ADC consent to build, but they can't get septic tanks, and they're just kind of, their lives are in limbo, and they're wanting to know what their future holds for them out there. And there's one big subdivision out there that's on the drawing board as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and it would be awful to be those people. I quite agree. So I've been talking to staff about this since Ian Neil alerted me to this issue yesterday, and I know Ian's been involved as well. But what I understand at the moment is we haven't put them on hold, and we are processing them. We're seeking some technical assistance around what systems might be acceptable. Because the problem at the moment is the system, this normal septic systems there's no way the downline neighbour can be guaranteed that their well isn't going to be affected because of the levels of nitrate in that particular area. So what we're doing is we're working with the consultants directly that have been put the applications in. I understand there's about 6 applications in at the moment. And getting the consultants to come back with information, and then we've commissioned technical people to help with that as well. Staff are fairly confident they will be able to come up with a solution. I guess it just might be taking a bit more time than developers and residents would like, and it possibly might cost more. I think one of the issues is that there's no reticulated system out there, is there, in this particular area?
No sewage, but we do have limited water reticulated.
Right. So maybe, that would be a way to fix it in the future, I guess. And that's about all the information I've got. So, Ian, do you want to say anything else?
Yeah. Look, I can add to that, Lynette. Pip Duffel and Mrs. Kingsbury, whose name I should be able to remember, but I can't offhand, contacted me before Christmas with their concerns. I talked to our consenting team about this, and they've outlined that, and we've got a response I've got an update response here from them saying that basically what Jenny said is that I said to the team that you can't say no, you've got to find a solution, and there has to be a solution. These people need to understand the way forward, and so they're working with them to try to make a clear pathway as to what will be acceptable so they can proceed. What's added to the tension, of course, is the fact that building costs have escalated, and so some of these people have got really caught out by any time delay has had a significant effect on the cost of development. I've also talked to Paul Caneen, who sold quite a lot of those sections, and partly because I saw that he had a new big subdivision going ahead to make sure that he wasn't going to contribute to the problem. But I gather his new subdivision will be hooked into your infrastructure. Yep. But he did say that as he understood it, there are solutions for some of these developers, but they're expensive, and that puts some of the solutions out of their budgets. It's a time cost squeeze, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Jane, we're putting that on our limbs now, aren't we? Alerting to people if they get a limb that there could be an issue with the septic tank out there. What do we do?
Yes, we are, but also consent applicants that we put consent notices on, telling them that they still need a consent from Environment Canterbury.
Yeah, and just a little bit of a follow-up. Apparently our science and planning teams are also working with your staff to do an updated study about where nitrates are coming from, and they expect that they'll have a mid-year, they're trying to speed that up. because they believe that would assist this issue as well. So I guess some of your staff or your CEO might be over there.
Yep, okay, thanks for that. Angus, question?
I have a different issue, but two different issues.
We'll finish with the North East councillors. Yep, great. Another question from Councillor Mackay, Jenny.
I've got two questions. First question is, Madam Chair, can I thank you? You said here, when you were asked here, that you were going to follow up on matters concerning rating, and especially with river rating districts, and I'm pleased to see that your staff are following through on that. But just one plea, it's personal from me to you, can you please make sure that it's uniform annual general charge, because if it goes on the general rate, it's going to actually really blow some people out of the water. So it's a question that can I thank you for that.
Can I get this for you, Jenny? Because,
yeah, you can do it, Ian.
Because it's pertinent to the meeting I was having in your antechamber. So what we're proposing for our annual plan is a reclassification of the rating system for the Ashburton River targeted rates, which is what you're talking about. So reducing the rating classification from 13 different classifications down to 6, and it's changing the percentages of rates collected, rebalancing it, and moving a higher impost onto urban and industrial development within the Greater Ashburton urban area, depending on the potential flood paths and the protection that you get from the stop bank at
Jesus Bend.
Yep, thank you. And then the other one up at Valletta, which hasn't been rated. So there's a new rating district coming down the south side of the Ashburton at a relatively low rate. There's a substantial percentage increase proposed for some parts of Ashburton town, but in dollar amounts it's relatively conservative. But it is still, the recommendation that's going to the annual plan will still be on a capital value rather than a uniform annual general charge.
Yeah.
And that's the recommendation from the staff. So, and the issue is because of the time pressures to get this reclassification into the annual plan, we had to either accept their proposal or reject it, in which case we'd miss another year. And this proposal for the River Rating Committee and for, I think, the majority of us is much better than the previous classification system.
Okay. Will you be consulting on that change to your annual plan, Ian?
Yeah. So
your plan's going out for
it's up for consultation, and I will. I mean, whoever's from the council who sits on the river rating target should have had the full detail. I know, Angus, you sit there, but you come in as a private citizen, I think. But
yeah, I think Lane's on.
Yeah,
Roger.
So Roger, you would. Oh, you haven't. The river rating scheme should have. All the members of the committee should have had a copy of it, and I've talked to the chairman and several of the other members, and they're very supportive of what's proposed.
Is that?
I'll make sure you've got the detail.
It came last week, and you commented back on it. Was that the?
It was. I think the final copy came out on Friday night.
Okay,
So,
not sure.
but I'd seen a earlier copy, which I had been assured that the whole liaison committee had seen. Okay, if you haven't seen it, I'll make sure you've got it.
Yeah. Philippa just says she has got it and she'll forward it to the councillors. Yep.
And I can just add to that my copy of the first one that came out last Wednesday or Thursday, whatever, fell off the back of a truck, and I can confirm that Councillor Latham, who is our official delegate, was not on the emailing list.
Oh.
So you've seen it?
It fell off the back of the truck to me, yeah.
Angus, you.
Second question.
Yep.
Madam Chair, this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine, I guess, because how I've been dealt with in the past. I actually believe that in modern democracy, is committed to equal rights of all citizens, and I actually find it offensive that a special racial group should have superior rights, and especially when Canterbury Regional Council is looking to get a bill through Parliament on such a matter. So my question to you is, would the Canterbury Regional Council accept any other wishes of other racial groups in the Canterbury region and sponsor such a bill through the House?
Well, thank you for the question, Angus, and I do know that you were on the council that got dismissed, and you have my empathy around that. I didn't support that either. But no, we definitely wouldn't support any other group. The background to this is that Mana Whenua, in Canterbury we only have one iwi, one Māori tribe that has got Mana Whenua over the land, and it's Ngāi Tahu. And the history of this goes back to, I guess, depends how long ago you want to talk, about 150 years ago or earlier with the treaty. And the grievances that Ngāi Tahu have felt and kept alive all that time. And then in the settlement with Ngāi Tahu in 1997, part of that agreement, and it's the only agreement that the Crown signed in this way, is that once the grievances are in part addressed, water was excluded from that, but they recognised Ngāi Tahu's rangatiratanga over the rohi, over the land of the jurisdiction of the Canterbury Regional Council and other parts of the the South Island, right down south actually. And then in that, but very importantly, if you look that piece of legislation up in clause 8 at the beginning of the legislation, we talk about to begin the process of healing and to enter a new age of cooperation with Ngāi Tahu. So after 20 years since that settlement, more than 20 years, that was in 1997, the time is right to try and look to do it differently, and that's where we're basing our decision around this in the wider context. There's a growing movement to get Ngāi Tahu and Mana Whenua and iwi, or however you want to term it, represented on councils everywhere. And actually, this is not that unique. The Bay of Plenty has exactly the same provisions, and they've had that in there since 2001. So the Regional Council, the Bay of Plenty, have had 2 iwi representatives at their table ever since, and they don't just have one iwi. I'm not actually over the details of how that those people are actually elected. Here, what we're proposing, and actually, Angus, the whole of our council table agreed to this, and there was extensive consultation papers and discussion. And as you know, and anyone who's followed it knows, when the government sacked ECAN, with the one that you were on, and put in the commissioners, they did have a Ngāi Tahu commissioner, and then they had 2 Ngāi Tahu commissioners, and then when the partial council came about, there was 2 councillors appointed, Ian Cranwell, who's at our council table now, and Elizabeth Cunningham, and they were both there. And then when this new fully democratic council was elected, a proposal was put up to get Ngāi Tahu back at the coalface. Now, the reason for that is it's cut out a whole lot of court cases. It's made it much cheaper to deal with the Mana Whenua consultation provisions under the legislation. And generally, under the Local Government Act, it's a requirement that all councils look at different ways of getting iwi and Mana Whenua and Ngāi Tahu, in our case, actually involved in the decision making. So it goes back to that, the bigger picture, and then the more recent 9 years experience. And we have, our council voted for two Mutaya to be on our council at the moment. They sit at our council table. They can vote on our council committees. They just can't vote at the council table itself. And that is working very well. So what it means is it just cuts the cost, and it cuts through what you're trying to have to do, and the cost to the applicants substantially when you're dealing with Mana Whenua. And the other thing is that we aren't getting taken to court so much. All through the 2000s and the 90s, there were huge court cases around, with Ngāi Tahu, around various parts of the resource management. So that's really what it's all based on. So, Angus, did you want to say anything else? Because I'm happy to. to keep talking. I'm probably on a different.
I'd just like to put on a record that Councillor Cunningham, who was at one stage elected by a group electorate or constituency in Christchurch, actually when she was sitting at the table, actually represented all citizens. And I was actually amazed with her ability to handle that. And she never, that I can remember, sidelined with one particular group. And I actually admired her because of that. But my personal commitment is that democracy is one person, one vote. And I'll just leave it at that. To say that it can be bought by court cases and that sort of stuff, I don't know. It just leaves a hollow in me. But that's all right. That's what the council has decided. That's what Parliament will obviously decide. But personally, I'm against it.
Yeah, okay, well, thanks very much for expressing your concern, and I hope I gave you a bit of an answer about why we're doing it.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny, for the good explanation. It was well done. And welcome, Peter. You've finally come in on with your technical difficulties. We can see you. I presume we can hear you. Welcome. Yep, great. And I have a question now from Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, and totally different topic, and I've got two questions if that's okay. Are there any thoughts on extending the Dry Creek River rating area? I know this has been something that's been spoken about in the past. It seems to be a bit of an issue because the rating area stops at Barker's Road in Methven, and there are a lot of farms, roads, etc. that are affected by any flooding that occurs from down there. So I don't know whether that's on your radar or not. I don't know if Ian can answer that.
Yeah, and Ian will answer it because he's the chairperson of the catchment committee we've set up, and I have to say he's doing very good work on the rivers, and Peter's been doing some of that work as well, so it's really improved our connection to our government table. So over to you, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. The chappie who looks after the Dry Creek swale, whose name just escapes me, Richards, Tom,
yep.
Rang me up after the floods and said, you've got to sort this out. And I went up to see him, and he wasn't at home, but I talked to a couple of his neighbours, and to my shame, I haven't been back up there since. So the answer is that it's not actually on the radar yet, but it is on I've got a note by my telephone in the kitchen at home to contact Tom, which is now getting quite old, I'm embarrassed to say.
And
the main issue, the way I did the length of Dry Creek, and the main issue seems to be the pinch point where the wide swell goes down through a whole lot of paddocks, and it flows into a pit. That's where that flows, in big flows, it flows out of that pit onto a road, into another channel, which it overflows, and then it scours out an intersection, and I don't know the roads.
Road, Jersey Road intersection.
That's right, and that seems to be where the issue is, and then that opens up into a nice big swale again.
And that area's not where it's rated, so it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And
maybe that's a discussion that we need to have, our team needs to have with your roading team, really, because it's...
I think that would be good.
Yeah.
I just might have a question just on that point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are the ECAM people aware that about 2005, 2006, at the request of the Dry Creek Rating District, that is the farmers below the RDR, actually petitioned Environment Canterbury and actually asked for them to be taken out of the rating district. There were a number of meetings over a 9-month period where the ECAN staff advised the landowners of what may happen, and there was a democratic vote held that was unanimous that they come out of the rating district. and the first one to complain, his name has already been mentioned today. So I leave that with you, that there was a democratic process that took these people out of the rating district.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that additional information, but we will, yeah, we'll definitely go ahead and do what Ian suggested.
Yeah, it needs a broad approach to the whole thing to sort it out, because what we've got's not working, especially after the floods, and it floods reasonably often. Liz, another question?
And another question, and this is on the My Way trial that's been running in Timaru, which I hear is very successful. How would that work as a trial in Ashburton? And could it work?
Sorry, keep going.
No, that was my question. How would it work in Ashburton, and how would that progress?
Yeah, well, I'll hand over to Peter because he's an expert on this.
Don't know about that. There's a couple of things that probably need to happen there. Is one, that we probably need to strike a PT rate for Ashburton if that was to start. The other issue with that, Liz, is that Whakatahi at the moment have put a hold on any further development of a My Way type model. Basically because of how successful it is. Selwyn are pretty keen to do it, and other areas in New Zealand are pretty keen to do it. And so what they've done is they've called for a continuation of the trial, as a trial, until at least 2023. We are unsure of whether we'll be funded. I think it's past the end of this next financial year. So it's in doubt at the moment as it stands. And that's a bigger issue, I guess, in terms of a whole lot of that stuff, Neil, around RTC and how we move forward in terms of the public transport space across the region.
Can I just add that, I mean, My Way has been very popular with the people of Timaru, but it is a very expensive service. It's substantially higher, and the patronage to date isn't enough to justify it under any of the government funding models. And it could be argued that if Ashburton wanted to proceed with a My Way type service, the cost, because of the population here, would be substantially higher than it is in Timaru, and it's already substantially higher than the previous service.
Thanks. Yeah.
Having said that, Matt, the patronage is increasing, so I guess that's why it's still in the trial basket.
And so I'll just also add that some of you might have seen in the news that Hamilton has just started a type of My Way in the inner city area. So I've followed that up, and that's with the regional council up there, Waikato, to see how they've funded it. And some of that's been funded by the City Council, and the City Council in Christchurch is actually looking at that model too. So, I mean, if you wanted to fund something yourselves, if that was a possibility, we might be able to, we could probably give assistance, because one of the reasons it succeeded so well in Timaru, wasn't it, Peter, was because of the in-depth consultation and engagement we did at the start.
The council support is the thing that's making it work.
Yeah, so, that might be something you can think about at Ashburton.
Great, we'll have a wee think about that. I've got a couple of, one request and one question. And the request is around the river rating districts, and it's around the governance. We have councillors appointed to their river rating districts, and they're a joint committee with Ashburton and Environment Canterbury, which is good. Having attended those meetings over the years, the council staffs, the ECAN council staff who attend, seem to want to run the meetings, and that's not true governance. So my request is, can your governance team give your ECAN staff who are on those river rating districts some training as to how a meeting should be run and who runs it, what's involved in it, is it an agenda, minutes of the previous meeting, and the general protocol of the meeting, and there's a chairman or woman who is elected, and they run the meeting, not the staff. So if we could ask for training of your staff members on the river rating area, that's in what we know about, for that to happen would be good. They're great at their job, but they're not governors. So we need that differentiation.
I hear you, Neil, and I really sympathise with you if that's the experience you've had, because there's nothing that gets an electorate member more annoyed in my experience than that. So I already followed that up after you mentioned it to me with the CEO, and we've got a new governance manager. We've created a new office of the CEO, of the chair and the CEO, like some of the other district councils have got. And we are actually revamping our whole governance area, because it was run differently under the commissioners, because they weren't under the Local Government Act.
Yeah.
Well, they sort of were, but they had their own act and they concentrated on that. So yeah, I'm sure people would love to give people training. So that'll be done.
Great, thanks for that. And the question I have is the freshwater policy, national policy statement on freshwater. You're developing up a new plan. How's progress on that?
Peter, do you want to respond to that, and then I can add in if necessary?
I can. I guess there's a couple of points here, Neil. One is that we're looking forward to this as an integrated plan, because we have to review our RPS at the moment, regional policy statement, and that, you know, from the Sanderson report and the way it's going to look, it might look as a spatial regional policy statement involving consultation with you guys and others across Canterbury. We're also in the midst of starting a consultation around a coastal plan, and of course the NPSM requires us to develop a framework for delivering Te Mana o Te Wai. So those three plans, the Change the Land and Water Plan, the coastal plan, and the RPS, are the integrated planning framework that we're looking at. The first part of that, because of the requirement to deliver under Te Mana o Te Wai, is a consultation with Mana Whenua, which we're in at the moment in terms of how we're going to go about that. And there is that piece of work. I'm not too sure how far down the track we are, but we must be coming to the end of that at this point in time. Now, as you will know, and others will know, that the engagement with Mana Whenua on this level, on this matter, is quite big, and it's quite quite time-consuming, and requires a lot of patience and diligence in terms of how we move forward with that. We're hopeful, I guess, within the next 2 to 3 months we'll have more light on this moving forward, but that's where we're at this point.
Thanks for that. Councillor Lovett, question.
Just going back to the river rating meetings, the timing, if you're going to revamp it, could you look at the timing of them? They're right in the middle of harvest season and you have them in the mornings and you're not capturing the numbers. I know we've got one coming up the 2nd of March and it actually clashes with a council day, so the 2 of us won't be there, but I think the whole thing needs to be looked at.
Who's the chair of it, Lynette?
That's the Eiffleton one.
Oh, the Hines. That's
Hines.
Peter Blaine, isn't it? Or is it Craig Fleming? No, it's Peter Blaine, I think.
Talk to the chair about giving the timing right.
I just think they need to have another look.
I think the scheduling, and I'm not defending the way they do it, Lynette, is designed to meet our annual plan and budget processes, I think.
Yeah, Diane?
New subject. Hello, Jenny, it's Diane here.
Hi, Diane.
I sit on the Total Mobility Committee representing the council, and we've got some big issues there. We've got a big disconnect has developed between the secretary, which is Ecan provided, and the chair and the committee. And I know several people have chatted upline to see what they could do about it, but I always believe if there's a problem, take it to the top and work your way down. So I just want to just let you know that's happening, and I think we need to have a good chat with you or somebody in your senior positions to remedy the problems. For example, our last meeting was a total failure. The secretary was in Europe. We hadn't had a minutes or an agenda or anything as such, and it all arrived a day, 24 hours after the meeting, which was a non-meeting as it turned out. So there are some quite big issues there, and a big disconnect has occurred. So I just want to start a process to repair that.
Okay, Peter might have the answer for that, I think. He's indicating.
Yeah, Peter, you
put some sound on, Peter. We can see your lips moving, we can't hear you.
Listen, I'll follow that up for you, because you are right. Isabel was in Europe, and I don't think she gets back till March. But just having a dead spot is not good enough. So let me do that. let me follow that up, and I'll get back to you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks for that. Councillors,
That's very good to raise that with us, Diane, because we don't want that happening either if it's possible to stop it.
Thank you very much.
great. Any further questions, councillors? Yep, they've got all their questions have been answered here, so we'll go to Jane Donaldson, their Environmental Services Manager, who can give an update on the Lake Camp situation.
Right.
Good afternoon. Just a quick update. When we started this exercise, I think there were about 70 long drops. We're now down to 29. 20 have long drops as their only toilet. 9 have a holding tank as well as a long drop. Some of them are in discussion over their intended action, and so there are actually 23 altogether where we've just had no contact at all. They have just received a letter, or are about to receive one, telling them that this is their last chance before enforcement action commences. The other thing that we've done is demolished a horrible old public toilet block with long drops next to the water ski club, and although the council's budget hasn't been formally approved yet, so far the inclusion of 45,000 has been supported for building a new toilet block on that site, which will include a facility for emptying camp toilet cartridges. We have those facilities available in the camping ground as well, but we're hoping that by providing this additional facility on the other side of the settlement, that will make things easier for people. And lastly, we are about to start consultation, I can't remember whether it's today or tomorrow, on the future of Lake Camp and Lake Clearwater. And our intention is to seek as much feedback as we can get from stakeholders and the public with a view to coming up with a 30-year development plan. So that's about it.
Thank you,
Well,
Jane.
that sounds really good.
Any questions?
Can I
Ginny?
ask a question?
Okay.
No, that sounds really good. Thanks just for giving us that quick update.
Yeah, we're doing our best up there. I've got Councillor Lovett, slide on. Councillor Lovett.
Is there any fines for people? We've heard some rumours that people are tampering or maybe tampering with their new holding tanks, putting holes in them. Is there any fine, a structure there of fines if they're found tampering? Or, yeah, something needs to be there.
To answer the other question that I just heard in the background, the reason people do that is to minimise costs of getting a takeaway company to come and clear out the tank. We are looking at what we can do about that if it's true. I know of at least one that I strongly suspect is true, and I gather you can tell by when the tank's emptied out if it gets hard to empty at the bottom because it's dry and crusty. Probably means that it's been holed. It was a bit of a graphic description, wasn't it? They would be in breach of their lease, but they would also be in breach of the RMA because that's an unauthorised discharge to land. But that would be most probably ECAN that would take that action, but we would certainly take action first and foremost as a landowner and go down the enforcement path with that.
All right, well, that's good advice. I don't know, do you want to say anything else, Ian? You went to the hut owners meeting?
No, because I think Liz was there, so she knows what was said there. But just a question, if I may, through you, Matt, as one crusty old dried up thing you might find at the bottom of the septic tank. What are the sanctions you will bring against those who aren't complying with the long drop ordinance?
I'm just wondering whether I should be saying that in public meeting because when
doesn't matter.
I could tell you afterwards if you like.
Just go for a cup of tea, and we're going to have a cup of tea shortly. So more than welcome to stay there. So we've got no more questions this end, Jenny and Peter. So thanks very much for coming along. Have you got no more questions for us?
No, not at the moment.
Great.
Thanks very much for inviting us. It's a good way to have a little chat.
It
Very
is.
good. It's quite good online, actually. It all worked well. So thanks for inviting us, Neil, and and everybody else.
Yeah, and thanks for the answers too. It's really good. And Peter, same to you. Thanks very much for attending.
Can you send your IT person down to see me, please?
We'll try. We'll take that my way down.
Bye. Bye.
So, thanks to see you. And Ian, thanks very much for joining. Ian, if you want to stay for afternoon tea, we can do that in probably 10 minutes. So have a chat then.
Just in terms of that river review, it was emailed to governance at ADC, but it clearly hasn't been circulated.
Yeah, it has
so
now. It has now.
Yeah, we pushed it around to make sure it happened. So cool.
Yeah, went to me and yep. So we have got that now. Thanks, Ian. That's good. Sarah.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us this opportunity to introduce to you a few new staff members. First I've got, sorry, it's funny having my back to people, but Alex Palafi. Alex is our new SharePoint person who's joined Gordon's team in IS. So SharePoint is one of our core systems that we use in terms of our intranet and also our electronic documents record management system. So yes, definitely key to have him on board. I can see we've got some new faces as well, and they're welcome to walk in the door, guys. Yeah, come in. As we speak, right in the door first is Fran Clark, and she is just sitting down and can potentially wave to everyone else. Fran is our new Animal Control and Enforcement Officer, who joined us just, well, I'm going to say a couple of weeks ago now, which is fantastic, and has had multiple years of experience, actually in the police, some of which was in Ashburton, and more recently in Picton. So yeah, animal control and enforcement sort of duties are a wee bit in her blood, but she's enjoying the change and no shift work. So there's an advertisement for council, you know, in terms of recruitment. So we're really thrilled to have her on board. We also have Mary Wilson, which you have met, Council. Mary is Hamish's, the CE's executive assistant / governance officer, helping out with Philippa and the governance team also. So you'll see her, and she'll communicate with you on a regular basis, no doubt. We've got Hope Autumn River, who is our new Education and Programs Coordinator at the Art Gallery and Museum. She's taken over a parental leave position from Simone. So yeah, welcome to Ashburton, and yeah, we really hope you enjoy your time while we're here. So that's our new staff for today. We have 4 service recognitions that we would also like to do now, and so Neil and Neil, is that okay to do the presentations? So if you can just walk forward, yeah, and get your small gift while I'm speaking, that'd be fantastic. So first I'd like to recognise Jamie Carradis. Jamie has recently passed her 5-year anniversary since starting in her role as rates officer in 2017. She has learned the ins and outs of the Rating Act, and this is a very prescriptive act, and one that you can often get tripped up if the T's aren't crossed and the I's dotted. Thankfully we haven't fallen into any significant holes, so thanks to Jamie's work, and obviously also her management team above her. Despite some customers not always wanting to pay rates, as an organisation they are critical and enable us to provide the funding to what we do. So thank you very much for your efforts, and congratulations on reaching your 5-year service milestone. We also have Lauren Wright. Lauren recently started at council in a parental leave cover position as our planning admin officer in 2016. Since then, she's been appointed to a permanent capacity role, and more recently, another fixed-term parental leave role, except this time as a graduate planner. So she's promoted up through the ranks and is expanding her skill set, and has definitely hit the ground running with regards to the number of consents that are flowing through the doors at the moment. So yeah, we're really glad that you're A, here, and B, have worked your way up in the organisation. And this one's really important. We've got Jane Donaldson, who's a member of our exec team. And Jane started at ADC on the 16th of January in 2012 as the Environmental Services Manager. So she's been with Council 10 years. She came from Christchurch City Council. And as you know, her role includes everything from planning to building, environmental management to health and liquor licensing, animal control, and also more recently, strategy and policy was added to her area of responsibility. Jane is involved in a number of council projects, some within her direct sphere of responsibility, but quite often others that she helps out, puts her hand up, and is willing to take on to help out with workload distribution. Most recently, these include the CBD upgrade project, instigating that, Lakewater Clearwater Improvement Project, which she gave an update to recently, and also has been part of the group who's the Lakehood Liaison Group. So yeah, I'd just like to say thank you very much for 10 years of service and support personally and professionally to all of us at the exec team. So thank you very much. And another milestone, which is a very significant milestone, is Paul Sanderson, and he is there at the back. Paul is our farmer at Ocean Farm. Paul started in December 2006 following the commissioning of our wastewater treatment plant and disposal system at Ocean Farm. Being the farmer at this property is unique, with additional consenting conditions that a regular farmer does not have to meet. Ocean Farm is a land disposal facility, and because of the foresight of previous councillors and staff, ADC is one of the few local councils that does not dispose treated wastewater to any local waterways or oceans. He does a great job managing the standing grass contract and grazing contracts, both of which provide revenue to the ratepayers. So thank you very much for your 15 years service, and yes, that's us for today.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you. Welcome to all the new staff, and thank you for the year's service for the staff who've been here for longer terms. Well done. We'll break now for a cup of tea, and you're all more than welcome to join us and have a chat. So councillors will get underway about 3:30, 3:35. Pressure time's is on our side, so no need to rush. Thank you.